What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Figuring It Out Finance podcast. My name is Chris Rickenbaugh, and if you haven't listened to this podcast before, I am a real estate investor, and I'm using this podcast to document my journey in real estate and business. I also have a passion for travel hacking, which I've gotten into within the last year or two, and then personal finance. So if you haven't already, go follow me on TikTok and Instagram, where I post daily about what I am doing throughout the week, lessons I'm learning, and videos and pictures of the current projects that I have going on. And you can listen to this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, like Spotify, Apple. Podbean is where I post them, and you can also find them on YouTube. So today's episode, we are getting close to the finish line on flip number 2. So if you followed me already, this has been going on since August. So it's been a long road, a lot of hard lessons learned, a lot of, I've stopped using the word stress because I heard this quote recently that stress is just the achiever's word for fear. So I've really wanted to stop using that word. So, lots of fears around this project and what's been happening. So, just a really big learning lesson. My first flip went perfect. You could say, so we closed, so I got it under contract, found the money, flipped the thing in 12 days, and technically 16 because I took a little bit, and then went under contract on day 2 to be able to sell it. And then that went very well. I made $8,000. And as soon as we sold that, rolled the money into this next flip project. And, right from the start, it was a little, but there's a couple things that saved me throughout this process, and we hit just about everything in the path trying to be able to get this thing done. Basically, starting from day 1 when we got delayed and we had yellow jackets in the wall, more delays, inspections that are still happening. Hopefully, the last one passes tomorrow morning, and then scheduled to sell in less than a week. So I just wanted to recap 3 pretty hard lessons I learned on flip number 2, and just big things that really saved me throughout this process. So number 1 is going to be run your numbers right. So running my numbers correctly, as I learned in Deal Flow Academy, is the only thing that saved me throughout this process, because we had a pretty big, or me and my contractor, my general contractor, we walked this house together, and he told me, it's like I gave him everything, like my wish list. I'm like, all right, this is what we're going to do. Here's this. And he's like, okay, this is going to be about $120,000. So we cut some things out, and he's like, all right, it's going to be $112,000. So that's a pretty big renovation project. And, I'm thinking, well, flip number 1, went really, really well. It's like, this is going to be about the same. It's going to be about 8 weeks, and we're going to be out. That is not the case. So being able to understand how the interest works on hard money is, because we're paying, a little over $2,000 per month. And then the biggest thing was that the hard money company only funded 75% of the renovation cost, which is where, I thought, I'll just finance this on credit cards. If a little interest hits, that's not terrible, and we'll get this thing sold within 3 months. That was not the case. We were going on almost month 8 now. Yeah. I'd have to do the math, but month 7 or month 8. So it's been a while, being able to understand and really go through that process, understanding credit cards, understanding money, the cash flow on these properties. That was the biggest thing, and it was really, really scary. And, working on correcting all of that now and being able to understand the lending a little bit more, that was a really big lesson. But as for the numbers I learned to run in Deal Flow, my first one, I was looking when we sold it And I said, where's this extra 15,000? And that's when I ran into the Deal Flow Academy, watched their quick videos, and, took the advice on what they presented in that short little video. And that's the numbers that I got for this one. It's like, okay, well, find your ARV, multiply it by 70 or 75%. So I did 75% minus the renovation costs, and that's what I had to buy it for. So it came exactly on the dot at 185. So I'm like, perfect. Numbers work great. We have room for the budget, and we even cut out an extra $8,000. So the only thing that held up this project, because looking at all the interest payments that I had to pay and the renovation costs, it came out to about 140. Just because it took so much longer. We had to pay extra people, extra hours. There was like a month or two of doing absolutely nothing, just little things here and there, and then an absolute mad dash at the end, and, craziness to be able to get this thing listed. So running the numbers correctly saved me a ton of money. So, making that note here. So running the numbers right saved me a ton of money, and that's why you should as well. So hoping to get that thing sold quick. But moving on to number 2 here is do not try and cut corners. So in the beginning of this project, it's a split level home, and it was looked at kind of like a basement, but it had plumbing down there. So all we needed to do was add an extra bathroom, cut into the concrete a little bit, and add it right there. So that wasn't a problem. But what we said to the city was, we're just looking to count the downstairs as square footage. I didn't think I would have to go all through these crazy inspections that the city was needing. And once we dove into that, it got really crazy. So that's what held us up for, a month and a half. And we're still looking, tomorrow is the final building inspection, just because he forgot one little area. So we got that taken care of. And then, we basically tried to cut corners, and it's not because I was completely ignoring it. It's just because I plain didn't know. So that's something that it's one of those things that happened, and I feel like I'm the person who should be eating that because, I didn't know, but now I do. And it was a really hard lesson to learn, so that next time, if we do anything in that area, we know exactly what to expect and what process we need to go through. We need to budget a little bit more to have licensed people come out. So, really, really hard lesson, but not cutting corners is easily the way to go, because if you're doing something wrong and you get caught, the only person to blame is you. So moving on to the last one here is project management. So what I mean by this is my GC, he did an amazing job being able to handle the subcontractors, coming out, him doing the work himself. He was great on the communication, and the part where I dropped the ball on the project management is that I didn't know exactly what was happening along the way of the project. So being able to understand that process from beginning to end, and being able to communicate with the realtor at the end, when staging happens, so that, things aren't clashing, people aren't in there. We're not, the biggest thing for us was just being able to try and get the thing furnished or staged, and then the house wasn't complete yet. So the crew was still, renovating the house in those last couple of days. And because we had to stage, that killed an entire day for that renovation crew to be in there. And, it held them up a day, and then that was into the weekend. So, it really killed about 2 or 3 days, and then they still weren't finished to be able to get the pictures all lined up. So that's what it's more on me for the project management, and not really on anybody else, because I didn't have certain systems in place to be able to have everybody scheduled and on time, make sure it's like, okay, this is complete, now we can stage. Okay, this portion, like if they're not complete, like I can't rush them. Like they're going to take as long as they need. And if they start cutting corners, then we run into what we have now to where we're having to go back and do this, go back and do little things. Then we can't do the final walkthrough to see and make a list on what needs to be touched up, because that's what's happening now through the inspection. With the current buyer is, we had a pretty good sized list of things that we needed to touch up or fix. So being able to do that final walkthrough after they were complete, before things are staged, we would be able to, sniff out a lot of those problems. So the project management now that I'm implementing is another thing that I learned in Dealflow, and that's going to be using Asana. So, I'm super excited to, use that here on the next couple projects. We're going to have like three or four going on all at once. As the duplex wraps up, we didn't use it on that one, but for all my other flips, we're going to be using it, tweaking it, implementing so that everybody is going to be on the same page. We can see the timeline of the project, and so nobody is kind of going on top of each other, and there's no conflict at all. So, to be determined on how that all goes, but I feel a lot more confident now after going through a lot of these hard lessons and being able to learn now that, when everything's going perfect, I feel like you learn very little. But when all of these things go wrong, you start being able to plan, you start being able to, analyze what is going on, how to manage it, and then how to overcome it. So, really tough lessons there, but, nothing that's completely put an end to my real estate career, which is a good thing. But it easily could have if I did not, plan better. If I didn't run my numbers right, it would have pretty much ended me. If I really tried to cut corners, I'm glad we just had the timetable to be able to make this happen, and a very understanding general contractor and realtor that were able to help me through this process and work with me through it. So, they're very thankful for that. Lots of lessons learned, and super excited about these next projects coming up. So that's going to be all for today's podcast, but thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back on Friday with another episode. So this is the Figuring It Out Finance podcast, episode number 115. This is Chris Rickenbaugh signing off.